What he's saying is about the game. What he's criticizing is about the game. And what he's talking about is what he wants to see in the improvement of the local game in Malaysia. Nothing else. But when you have vindicative officials, which I think is inevitable that everywhere in the world you might have one or two rather vindicative officials who want to have it their way or make everybody else take the highway, it is always difficult, but yet it also serves as a quiet reminder that at times there are boundaries that no matter how much we love the game, we can't cross. But still, it should not make journalists, it should not make the media, it should not make the pundits and fans feel afraid to speak up because of this legal action, which I feel, especially the amount, is really ridiculous. When it comes to legal action in the world of football, we talk about usually about one group of plaintiffs with various interests, massive interests, taking legal action against either the World Football Governing Body FIFA or region or continental governing bodies, or even up to the National Football Association. And usually this involves very high stakes, involves the breach of terms of contract or complaints over various disputes or unfairness or issues that arose over a certain event that happened. And one of the more recent cases there have been a few cases that have been reported widely in world football media of late where this level of legal action is concerned, and among them include Liverpool fans suing UEFA over the horrific crowd control situation at Stade de France ahead of their 2022 Champions League final against Tottenham Hotspur, and more recently when FIFA and Mexico went back to court because Mexico were not willing to comply with FIFA's order on controlling their fans or regarding some homophobic chants and such. And even as late as last year when FIFPro, the global governing union on the welfare and well-being of footballers worldwide, filed legal action against FIFA for overtaxing the players with a very crowded football calendar. With that included the upcoming FIFA Club World Cup, which will be held in the United States of America in June this year. So with these legal actions, you can tell that there are various interests at stake by collective bodies, even whether it's a group of fans, whether it's the Global Footballers Union, FIFPro, or even a national association against the world governing body. It's usually these bodies that come up and duel and settle legal disputes in front of judges in the court of law anywhere around the world. But what is rare is it's the other way around, where the FIFA rarely does it unless it's against groups, but regional confederations or continental confederations and even national football associations rarely do the other way around, which is to sue individuals over alleged defamatory statements, alleged false content or misinformation. But yet, recently in Malaysia, this had exactly happened to Malaysian football reformists and a former employee of the Football Association of Malaysia, Saif Ismail, when he tweeted on X that he was suddenly shown a letter of demand which was sent by the plaintiff, the General Secretary of the Football Association of Malaysia, Nur Azman Ar-Rahman, over alleged defamatory content in some of the earlier posts that he put up on this particular social media platform that put his former employers in a very bad light. And what was even more eye-catching was 5 million ringgit in legal costs, or to be sued for that amount, which personally I think it's quite ridiculous. I mean, you're not suing a politician, you're not suing a body or company over this, you're suing an individual where an employee turned fierce critic of the local game in Malaysia, where he desires to see reform and all that. But yet, this is not without precedent, because whether it's the National Football Associations or Continental Football Confederations and even FIFA, they have their own interests to keep their reputation intact, no matter how much the world football fandom says all kinds of things about them being this, being that, being dictatorial, being greedy, being this and all, and whatever you name it they can say. But typically when it comes to FIFA, regional continental football confederations, even regional football associations and national football associations, they don't usually have time to keep going after specific individuals without just cause. Although I must add, before this case which I just mentioned, a similar incident had happened before the Singapore courts way back in 2013, when the Asian Football Confederation's former marketing partner, World Sports Group, had actually filed legal action against academic and journalist James M. Dorsey over to demand him to reveal the sources of what he had said in his blog over the alleged payments of former AFC president bin Hammam, which Dorsey countered by actually refusing to reveal the source, because it would put whoever blew to him with those sensitive documents in grave danger, and subsequently succeeded in his appeal to the High Court, the Court of Appeal, where that decision to the demand to reveal sources was subsequently overturned in 2014. So there was precedent where a body had to take action against an individual because, as a collective, it felt, in this case World Sports Group, felt that its reputation was in serious danger of being undermined by what you can say in today's context, whistleblowing on financial irregularities and such. But in Shive's case, this is about his own opinions, his own thoughts on how he feels the local game in Malaysia can be reformed at the national and state level and beyond, and giving criticism, maybe it's at times overreaching, but nonetheless, if you don't love the game, you wouldn't be criticizing so much, or if you're already resigned to it, no one would be criticizing this much. But as one who has worked inside Football Association Malaysia, who has seen all these things inside in the internal workings of the game in the country, he knows what he's talking about. He definitely knows quite a fair bit of sensitive, confidential information that has reached him, and he knows why the game has been heading in that direction as such. And what was rather unusual is, it could be said that the General Secretary is probably taking orders from either the current FM President, who only took office just 1 or 2 months ago, a few months ago, or the former FAM President Dato Hamidin Amin, but who is now currently a FIFA Council member. But all this, all said and done, it's rather mind-boggling that one can be sued to such an extent using old information, old posts where you talk about what he said on this day, on this date, on this X, on this platform, in this case X, on what he criticized about, and starting to show legal cause, which to this extent, in this context, I do find it laughable. Except I must admit this. I do sympathize with him, because sometimes you wouldn't know whether it is the instructions from above, or it is a potentially an overzealous official inside the National Football Association that wants to ruin the person individually. why can I say this? It's because of something that happened to me back in 2014. It nearly happened. Football Association of Singapore nearly sued me for an article I wrote about the then men's national team head coach Ben Stanger. I admit, at that time I was not I was quite anti this particular coach because of the previous success the Singapore national team had enjoyed under his predecessor Rajko Avramovic of Serbia. And this guy comes in and his results had not been impressive, and I wrote this article then on the online 442 Singapore website after Singapore were knocked out in the early stages, failing in its title defense at the first hurdle on home soil following a 1-3 defeat to Malaysia in the final group game. And I think I mentioned a few details where I say how Ben Stanger was picked by who was on the selection panel, and why I felt that he wasn't the now retired football coach who has extensive experience coaching in the Middle East, in Europe, and even in Australia as well in the early 90s, why he was not cut out for the job and why he should be sacked and all that. The funny part is, after that article was published, it received a lot of comments, it received a lot of public, you can say there was a resonance with the football watching public, the anger over the Lions' early elimination from the biennial ASEAN Championship, and that somehow snowballed into something where I heard from two separate sources where I was informed, I think in late December, that I was nearly sued by the Football Association of Singapore. This close. And from my educated guess since, what I can say is it is highly unlikely that it's not Ben Stanger who is out to get me. It's not him. But it is a now former Football Association of Singapore high-ranking official who hates me so much that he has shown this article to his friends in the legal profession, and they all find it that it's potentially suable. But no matter what, thank heavens, somebody else above him intervened, and thus there was never a legal case to begin with. I wouldn't name that official who hated me in verbatim here, but what I can say about this particular overzealous official is he hated me from the very start when we first saw each other when I was still writing, and he never looked at me in the eye. This is something that's very particular. There are people who don't like me, but when we first meet, we're still quite cordial, we can still chat, we can still look at each other in the eye. But this guy stood up because he never once looked at me in the eye throughout his time in FAS, and probably he was trying to find ways and means to get me into trouble to make himself feel vindicated. And how do I know about this? Because separately, again, ironically, it involves Ben Stanger again, and it wasn't Ben Stanger who is angry about it. He happened to be presiding the press conference after Singapore drew 2-2 with Guam at Bishan Stadium, and I recalled an incident where there was a war of words between the then captain Shari Ishak and Stanger on the sidelines that caught my attention, and I asked him about it thereafter. And strangely enough, a few days later, that was in 2015, a few days later, of all people, the then team manager of Singapore representative side Lions 12 in the Malaysian League, he talked to me. I know, it's very strange. He talked to me over this matter I was like, this Lions 12 manager was also the national team manager at the time. And it wasn't he was not inside the press conference, but for some reason, that very petty, zealous former FAS media official. Yes, rather high ranking because he was director. That very zealous guy who tried to get me into trouble again. And he sort of did, but I was a bit when the former manager told me about this, I was like, I was as surprised that it reached all the way to the team manager who wasn't really involved in the media proceedings that evening after that international game. So it's quite clear that sometimes if you have very vindicative football officials who want to give his perceived enemy hell, it is always possible that he can use any means just to make this person pay. And I believe it is also along this, from this personal experience and educated guess and experience, that I can see why Shaif Ismail is being suddenly sued by the Football Association Malaysia. There is somebody probably in FAM who really hated him for his reformist views, for his views on the grounds of the games, because it collided with his own other interests. And as a result, it is where you can say they will find any excuse just to accuse this person of defamatory means. And fortunately, and I think I would say this quite confidently, the lawsuit can be placed. But is Shaif Ismail a politician who is of serious threats to the Malaysian government or to any higher authority, including Malaysian sports authorities beyond the Football Association of Malaysia? And the timing seems a little bit off. Why now? Why did they take the time to compile all these posts, defamatory posts, and just suddenly throw him that show cause letter and to pay damages of 5 million ringgit, which I find it very excessive. I mean, even in Singapore, where lawsuits on opposition politicians used to be commonplace, they don't even, I mean, apart from the more extreme cases where a few million are concerned, this is very extreme. Very extreme. So what does this particular official behind this suit? It may not be the General Secretary himself. The General Secretary is probably executing an order on behalf of the association, but who is behind it, we don't exactly know. But what we do know is there is always that kind of caution on when it comes to expressing the views, because in football fans have all kinds of views that we all want to say. We can say this, we'll say this, we'll say. I think even more than in politics, you can say that this General Secretary is useless, or what is he doing? Why is he doing this rubbish? Or, I mean, in our own respective fan view or spectator view, oh, why our football cannot make it lah? This one lah, there's one but bodoh lah, there's one like, I don't understand what he's trying to do. Why is he trying to blah blah blah? Or this guy is no good for football because all he knows is how to talk but never give action, so on and so forth. It's like you can see the wide array of football is where you can have such a varying wide and amounts of opinion, and it's not usually going to affect the highest levels unless it directly affects their interests and threatens his or her interest inside the highest executive body. So, but yet it is an attempt by the Football Association of Malaysia to try to send a warning to other critics of the Malaysian game to say, hey, control your mouth a bit, control your keyboard fingers a bit, don't shoot off your hips so much. I think in this age today, and rather in a more liberalized Malaysian football world, because when you already have the Ultras Malay who has become one of the most powerful fan base in Asia, if not the world, the most influential fan base who can really swing opinion of the more casual Malaysian football fans, then this message is rather disturbing, because it intends to stifle, to control the content. I mean, it's about football. It's not about the politics. It's not about your Pakatan or UMNO or DAP whatsoever. No. Or even your Dewan Rakyat and all that whatsoever. No. it's more about wanting to stifle control and wanting to tell others, you don't say this, otherwise we will hit you with something you cannot expect. And from personal experience, you can say that it's a bit subtler. It's subtler in my own case, but yet somehow there's a message. Don't try to cross the line too far. But yet, it can be the case of is that official who don't like you uses the person that you are attacking, and that person you are attacking is not really bothered whether you are saying criticizing his tactics, team selection, how his interpersonal relationships with players, because he doesn't expect the journalist or the critic to know the full workings inside the dressing room and so forth. And yet, when you have all these unraveling of details, or rather alleged, they can use it to twist around those officials who want to hit back at their perceived enemies, critics, and all that. They can use all these details to twist around, and I think it's meant to be a warning. It's meant to be a warning to everybody else by using Saif Ismail, an insider who knows a lot, and a critic, a reformist, to warn the rest about trying to cross that so-called red line that they have imaginarily constructed. If you say it's the coach himself, then probably it's the coach character. But usually when it comes to head coaches, they do not really bother what we fans or journalists or critics and all whatsoever think usually, because they would usually know best what it means to work for the national team or the club side, or the tactics, the structure, on how the game is played. And usually they can be quite, whatever their characters and mode or outlook, usually at that moment they will fulfill their obligations, they'll face the line of fire. And because no sane journalist will go on and talk about what attacking what family lah, this lah, that lah. It's like that one is clearly crossing the line, because but you can see in Shaif, he did not do that. He did not even talk about so and so player's family issue or personal issue or private scandal whatsoever. No, it's just about football, reforming, change the game and all that. But yet somehow a particular official got hurt, and the general secretary was ordered to file this legal claim. So it is pretty clear that there's plenty of petty politics at work, and as such, he bears the full brunt of this potential but also very ridiculous legal action as a signal to critics to to self-censor, to moderate their football opinions, which in Malaysia, where football is still widely talked about thanks to the success of Johor Darul Takzim, and then also Harimau Malaya's recent expedition into the last year's AFC Asian Cup finals for the first time since 1980. So the attention of the game has increased. So with more people talking about the game, to try to silence and to draw a thicker red line than what is acceptable, or you can say OB markers, it is pretty disturbing to say the least, because what he's saying is about the game, what he's criticizing is about the game, and what he's talking about is what he wants to see in the improvement of the local game in Malaysia, nothing else. But when you have vindicative officials, which I think is inevitable that everywhere in the world you might have one or two rather vindicative officials who want to have it their way or make everybody else take the highway, it is always difficult. But yet it also serves as a quiet reminder that at times there are boundaries that no matter how much we love the game, we can't cross. But still, it should not make journalists, it should not make the media, it should not make the pundits and fans feel afraid to speak up because of this legal action, which I feel, especially the amount, is really ridiculous. It should be squashed, and he does not owe FM an apology for what he talks about, what he feels about the game, unless certain interests were really affected because of what he said, which I doubt is that damaging that it requires such a hefty legal lawsuits, which is very laughable in many levels. If you talk beyond football, very laughable in many levels. Like, why do you sue a private citizen for 5 million ringgit or X amount of money in whatever currency for something, unless you're talking about investigations, what FIFA tried to attack Andrew Jennings, but all they did was to remove him from the press conferences, and that's it. FIFA did not push much further than that because they were afraid of what the late British sports journalist Andrew Jennings was trying to do when it comes to exposes the underlying murky waters of the game. So it is a delicate act. Even when you want to find out things, you do need to collect evidence, you do need to have copies, irrefutable proof to show that this actually happened before they'll come out and admit. And also the right to protect your sources, the right to keep your sources, the whistleblowers, away from the damage has always to be there. It has to be protected. And I think because of this reliance on legal law to the common law to attempt to zip Saif Ismail's lips, I think could there be a case where we may require a separate sports court, as unlikely as it sounds, in Malaysia or in this part of the world, in Southeast Asia, just to deal specifically with sports related issues. I mean, for Malaysian football fans who have been monitoring or who have been aware of this Saif Ismail's viral post on him being sued by the Football Association of Malaysia, what do you all think? I mean, you can leave your comments on Tanya Jia in the YouTube comments and in all the comments on TikTok and on Instagram. And I do look forward to see what you all have to say about this. Have a good day.